any changes to the agenda or any consent agenda line items that you would like to pull? Ms. Hill?
None at this time.
Dr. Sorensen?
No, sir.
Ms. Underhill?
No, thank you.
I don't know either. And just as a quick update, Representative Pingarelli, she may show up at some point, but I believe she's pretty busy downtown with the state's budget. So at this point, she's not in attendance. With that said, I do need a motion to approve the agenda and in addition to the consent agenda.
I move to approve the agenda in addition to the consent agenda.
I'll second that. Ms. Contra, we have a motion by Ms. Underhill and a second by myself. Board members, please cast your votes. Motion passes. 4 and 1 absent. Moving on to Section 6, recognitions. 6.1, Ms. Airy.
Good evening, President Sandoval, members of the board. There are none this evening.
All right, thank you. 6.2, board comments. Ms. Hill.
No comments at this time.
All right, thank you. Dr. Sorensen.
No, sir.
Ms. Underhill.
I just had a couple things that I wanted to highlight. First of all, I just wanted to highlight that a really critical part of our PD, or both a combination of HR and PD, is our instructional coach model that we use here. And just in a recent board report, we received some really good information about how valuable that was to our teachers this year. And I just know as a teacher myself how valuable that can be. So I just wanted to kind of call out that program, thank our instructional coaches and their leader, Miss Nina Buckley, for her work with those teachers this year, which was critical, especially with COVID and all that. Secondly, I wanted to just say that I'm really happy to see that we are moving forward with some training, a multi-tiered system of support and training, so that all of our site admin will be able to share that with their staff, so that we can make sure that we can really meet with where our students are at this year as they come back in the fall. And just want to make sure that, just wanted to say that I'm excited that we're proactively getting ready for that. And then finally, I just wanted to say, again, thank you to all of you that have come out to speak with us, to share your voices. Your input is greatly appreciated. And I want to continue to thank the other 36,900 some families and children and the 4,000 staff that are also part of our district, and just let them know that we continue to appreciate their support and we appreciate their voices, and we need to hear from them as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Underhill. And yeah, for myself, I just want to give a quick shout out to we are in our summer programming and, uplifting our students. So, certainly want to thank our teachers and staff who are there enriching the lives of our kids. And I also want to give a shout out to our food services team who continue to provide those meals to our community across the district. So thank you for both those teams. All right, moving on to 6.3, superintendent comments. Dr. Reynolds.
Thank you, President Sandoval, Governing Board, Cabinet, and guests. First of all, just to pass along, as you mentioned earlier, President Sandoval, Representative Pingarelli is hard at work down at our state legislature, and they're going a little longer than anticipated, so she's unable to be here and just wanted me to pass along her regrets. So I wanted to make sure to do that. Recently, I had an opportunity to attend a meeting hosted by our Peoria Education Foundation along with President Sandoval, who is the board representative with that organization. And anyone who is new to our district or unfamiliar with the foundation, this is a nonprofit that has been around since 1987, which supports Peoria Unified students and teachers by providing grants and scholarships. Although the grant program was temporarily put on pause this past year due to COVID, the foundation still awarded more than $45,000 in student scholarships for our graduating seniors. Normally, we recognize the foundation board members at a governing board meeting each year, but we have not been able to do so this year, so I thought I'd just take a brief moment and tell everyone how grateful we are for their volunteer work and the support that they provide our students and our teachers. Kindergarten enrollment is underway. It's hard to believe that we're we're focused on the fall and welcoming our kindergartners back. We want to help prepare our kinder students for the upcoming school year. Many schools are hosting a Jumpstart program on their campus this summer. We are also hosting a Kindergarten Live event on Thursday, July 8th, which will cover all the ins and outs of kindergarten for families who have questions, and for those of you who have children and remember that first day of kindergarten. That is a big, big day in a family's life. So we're excited for that. But those who cannot watch the event live, a link will be available for families to tune in and see it on demand at a later time. Details on how families can enroll in their kindergartner in one of our schools are on our district's website at peoriaunified.org/kindergarten. We encourage them to register now so we can be prepared and they can be prepared for the start of school on Wednesday, August 4th, which is just around the corner. We also have great news coming in from our arts program, with 24 high school students receiving their Arizona State Seal of Arts Proficiency for the 2020-21 school year. The Arts Seals are awarded to students who complete the arts pathway requirements throughout their high school career by demonstrating artistic literacy and high levels of competency in media arts, visual arts, dance, theater, or music. We are excited that all 7 high schools and all art disciplines are represented by these students, and are glad these students are being recognized for their talents and dedication in whatever art form they choose. And lastly, students in our MET Professional Academy recently attended a 2-week TGen Leadership Academy, where students dive deep into their understanding of bioscience and precision medicine. What a great opportunity for those students and that they were given, and we want to thank our friends at TGen for their partnership. And that ends my comments for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, moving on to Section 7, public comment. Request to address the governing board regarding matters not included on the agenda. The board president shall keep control of the meeting and require the speakers and the audience to refrain from abusive or profane remarks, disruptive outbursts, applause, protests, or other conduct which disrupts or interferes with the orderly conduct of the business of the meeting. Personal attacks on board members, staff, or members of the public are not allowed. It is inappropriate to utilize a public hearing, the public comment segment, or any other agenda items for the purpose of making political speeches. Engaging in such conduct and failing to cease such conduct upon request of the presiding officer will be grounds for ending a speaker's time at the podium or for the removal of any disruptive person from the meeting room at the direction of the board president. With that said, we do appreciate everybody's voice. It's valuable and really invaluable. We will spend 30 minutes on public comments, 3 minutes per individual, and Dr. Reynolds in the district will respond, where appropriate. We do have quite a few public comments. We did randomly shuffle them to create some level of equity as far as the speakers, but we'll see if we can get through all of them, okay? Our first public comment comes from Mr. Mark Del Maestro.
Good evening. My name is Mark Del Maestro. I'm a combat Vietnam veteran. I am also an American patriot, and I believe in God, and I'm not ashamed or afraid to say it. I believe in God. The trilogy of freedom in America is God, country, and family, and all 3 are very important. It's like a 3-legged stool that can't fall, because each one has its strength. God, country, and family. In the socialist environment, the Socialist Party is more important, and God, country, and family have no value. And the line is easily drawn today. You can see it clearly. God chooses the color of our skin, and God chooses if we're a man or a woman, and it's a simple truth. It's just a simple truth, just like 2 and 2 equals 4. And I would expect the schools to be teaching these simple truths. I met a young lady the other day who had just graduated high school, and she was all excited that she had gotten a job for $9 an hour. And I said, "So how much do you make if you work an 8-hour day?" And she couldn't tell me. She didn't know. And she graduated high school. And I said, well, you could use your phone, calculators in your phone, you're on your phone all the time. And she said, I don't need to know that. The computer will give me the check and it'll have all the deductions I need. I don't need to know that. I said, but the world runs by the numbers, and math is critical. And for the rest of your life, you're going to need math. And how do you know that they're not making a mistake on your check? How would you know? Oh, I don't feel I need to know that. So I was concerned. How do you graduate high school and not know simple math? What are you doing? It's just amazed me. It just amazed me. How does she get past that? So my question to you is, and I'm sure you must answer it every day, how do we get to these kids? How do we encourage them to buckle down and learn what they really need to know? How can they understand the trilogy of freedom in America? God, country, and family. How do we do that? The question is yours to answer, but the concern is great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Delmeister. Next public comment comes from Ms. Heather Champion.
Good evening. My name is Heather Champion. I'm a proud parent in Peoria Unified School District. I have come to these meetings and I have watched Heather. I've watched some great people stand up here and give very passionate speeches about what they believe is right. But on Flag Day this year, June 15th, one of our schools in Peoria Unified School District, Desert Valley Elementary School, had the audacity to raise our American flag upside down. That's like 101 as far as being an American. How disrespectful to the men and women who have served our nation, who continue to serve our nation. How disrespectful. And you know what? I was actually interested because I'm like, I've never seen it. Let me actually look up what it means to fly a flag upside down. And I did. I looked it up. I know a lot of people aren't big on facts, but I am. So flying a flag upside down, it's an intentional insult to the country for which it represents. The only time a flag is to be flown upside down is when in dire distress in an instance of extreme danger to life and property. The flag represents our country of being a free country, which so many men and so many women have died and continue to fight for. And I have not seen anyone apologize for that. There's no excuse for that. And there's no apology that has been given. I have men and women in my family who fought for our rights. And this is the respect you show them. Wow. You guys have been a spectacle in my house. I have told my kids, I said, hey, do you want to learn about the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights? Let's learn about it. And they sometimes will give me a little bit of fluff. I have a 10-year-old and a 13-year-old. But my example is, look at the board that serves your school. Be smarter than them. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Ms. Champion. Next public comment comes from Ms. Carol Raber.
Good evening. Over the past few months, several teachers and parents speaking out in favor of the PUSD diversity and inclusion curriculum have made the argument that parents arguing against CRT don't want factual history taught. That could not be further from the truth. As a matter of fact, I would love to see more history taught. So let's have a little history lesson, starting with the origins of critical theory. I only have 3 minutes, so I'll have to make it brief. Critical theory was developed by the Frankfurt School, a school of philosophy founded in the Weimar Republic in the early 1900s. The Frankfurt School scholars were mostly known for the brand of culturally focused neo-Marxist theory. It provides the basis for a number of contemporary approaches to social science, including critical race theory, cultural theory, gender, and queer theory. Is it any wonder that the parents are also concerned with the way PUSD has implemented what is known as social-emotional learning, which has many of the same roots? In 2008, Marxist historian Howard Zinn launched the Zinn Education Project with the purpose of expanding Zinn's teaching and indoctrinating a new generation of Americans. Zinn readily admitted that his account of history is not subjective, and was designed to take sides against America. The Zen Education Project was responsible for organizing rallies supporting critical race theory and supporting teachers' unions that endorsed the radical teachings. Black Lives Matters as well has Marxist ties. One of the founders of BLM, Patrisse Cullors, has proudly referred to herself as a trained Marxist. Until just a few months ago, the BLM website stated that one of their roles was to disrupt the nuclear family. This was only removed after a backlash following the looting and violence of last summer. I found this very interesting because study after study has shown that the best way to reduce poverty is to support the nuclear family where possible. Red for Ed, while they claim to be fighting for teachers' pay, also has ties to Marxists. One of the leaders of the Red for Ed movement has written for the Marcus Jacobin magazine in calling for teachers to use the might of a significant part of the education system as a lever to flip purple or red states to blue. He has also called for the use of tactics directly out of the Saul Alinsky playbook, including democratic organizing through union reforms and gradual escalation of tactics. Now, I don't know about you, but I have some serious reservations about teaching doctrines that have been pushed by proponents of an ideology that has, by many estimates, resulted in the deaths of over 100 million people. If nothing else, it should be a serious red flag. I mentioned several weeks ago that I have disenrolled my daughter from Centennial. To be perfectly honest, I did so with the hopes that Governor Ducey, the legislature, and the school board would come to their senses and ban CRT before August. But before I re-enroll my daughter, I am insisting that the school ban the teaching of critical race theory and related topics, provide access to all teaching materials for review, including supplemental materials, provide meaningful penalties for teachers who fail to abide by the ban, and allow parents to proactively opt out of lessons they find objectionable.
Thank you, Ms. Raber. Appreciate your time. Next public comment comes from Mr. Mark Rooks.
Members of the board, thank you for your time. These comments are around the social emotional learning issue. So just a few comments. So one of the founders of CASTLE, the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, his name was David Slider, if I may be mispronouncing that. He was a senior advisor to the Fetzer Institute. On the Fetzer Institute website, they openly promote a false spirituality, which is in direct conflict with Christian values. In fact, John Fetzer was a disciple of Satanist Alice Bailey, who claimed to receive special revelations from spirits known as the Ascended Masters. On the surface, it seems like just another tool for pushing left-wing politics, but really it's much darker than that. This spiritual foundation is not Christian or anything remotely compatible with Christianity or Judeo-Christian principles. Rather, it is based on the occult New Age teachings of individuals such as Lucifer Publishing Company's founder, Alice Bailey. She is the self-proclaimed herald of the Maitreya, the world teacher, Benjamin Krim, and other gurus. So do we as parents and grandparents want our family values to be overruled by this new state-sanctioned religion? Do we want our children to be taught that their parents' values are dangerous and outdated? Do we want Christian spirituality, anti-Christian spirituality brought into enslave the minds of our children to the false gods of the New Age? If I teach my children and my grandkids that an intimate physical relationship outside of marriage is a perversion of God's design for marriage, will our kids be ridiculed for their intolerance? The fact that we, the majority of parents and grandparents, want to be the ones teaching our children godly morals and values, it is wrong for this state to impose itself in the most precious and sacred duties parents have in raising their children according to godly, biblical-based values. Please end this district's relationship with social emotional learning. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rooks. Next public comment comes from Ms. Tressa Rappold.
Good evening, Dr. Reynolds, President Sandoval, members of the board, and community. My name is Tressa Rappold, and I am here as a Peoria Unified parent and community member. Until recently, I had never heard of critical race theory. Then, community members began speaking about it at school board meetings here and around the country. Emboldened by fringe political groups and media personalities, they've been speaking in opposition to this theory, claiming that it is bad for our children and ostensibly worried that it is or soon will be a part of our curriculum. Although I hadn't heard of this theory as a well-educated product of this district, I knew that I had a duty to seek out more information from reliable sources and to apply critical thinking skills. What I have found out about critical race theory so far is this. At its core, it seeks to shine a spotlight on the structural oppression that is part of our society. I love our country. I am a patriotic American who wants to see our country be the best version of itself that it can be. I want my children to learn of our flaws and to help us overcome them. Ongoing structural racism is one of those failings. Anyone who wants our children to remain ignorant of this should examine why, especially if they stand to benefit from the structural inequalities still in place today. I think the main reason for the sudden uproar is politics. Politicians are using this controversy to invigorate their followers. They are making false claims that white kids are being taught that they are innate oppressors. That is not happening in our classrooms. They are also mixing up critical race theory with culturally responsive teaching, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and even social and emotional learning. The bluster and inconsiderate behavior displayed at board meetings by the opponents of critical race theory are unworthy of the good work done here. Nevertheless, in some ways, I am thankful that CRT has been brought to our attention so we could learn about it. Otherwise, who knows how long it would have stayed put in graduate-level university programs. I may not change the mind of anyone who has already decided that CRT is a problem, but let me direct this to you on the board, our apolitical board, and to our administration, and to anyone out there in our community who is unsure of what this uproar is all about. This venue is being used and abused for political purposes. This disruption and division are about political strategy and not about what is best for the children in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rappold. Next public comment comes from Ms. Heather Rooks.
Hello, board members, superintendent, and guests. I would like to ask again for a public town hall with the superintendent, administration, and community. There is a lot of mistrust by the district and questions that need to be addressed. Another request I would like to ask is why a teacher is being told by the curriculum department that there is no money for textbooks. This question has still not yet been answered. I find it sad that some teachers want pro-American supplemental resources, and the district is not providing that. I would also like to ask for more information on the social emotional program in Peoria District, specifically the program Bloom 365. I will read a few curriculum content things from the Bloom 365 program that I found on here. There's a 7-dose Bring Love 365 curriculum. They have defining relationships, friendships versus dating, healthy versus unhealthy, root causes and risk factors, rigid gender norms and stereotypes. There's self-esteem, self-care, social connectedness. Peoria District keeps inserting this curriculum into classrooms, and it makes me wonder, does the district believe that they know best when it comes to teaching values to our kids? This is not your responsibility. Teaching all the things mentioned in the Bloom 365 program is mine and my husband's job. This needs to stop. Who gives the district the authority or the right to teach social emotional learning? Why is the district spending so much money and time? That is something that is not their job. That money should be spent on educating kids in reading, writing, math, science, and American history. The CEO of Bloom 365 believes in teaching critical race theory to students and adults. So how do we know critical race theory is not hidden in the program Bloom 365. More unanswered questions I would like to address. Why does an ex-board member have a district email still? I would like to see more availability of parent, grandparent, and community members to be able to sit on committees. For example, the committee for the adoption of the ELA back in the fall of 2020. The district approved ELA courses Benchmark Advance and My Perspectives, which is a partner of Savvis Learning Company, which we are finding controversial content on there. I also would like to have curriculum resources and materials available on school websites so parents can see what is being taught. Where is the district on math, reading, and writing interventionists for our students? And is there a process being developed on teachers using supplemental resources in the classrooms, and who is vetting the resources? Will a process be ready before the school year, and will it be shared with the community and the parents? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Rex. Next public comment comes from Ms. Laura Tepason.
President Sandoval, board members, Dr. Reynolds, and guests. Proactively, I came here 3 times and said no to CRT, diversity and inclusion. Today, I say enough with monologues. The Groundhog Day-ness trend and monologues are not effective nor efficient. Let's build some connections. Let's combine connection, courage for transparency, and meaning. I verbally and officially request a community meeting to have a dialogue about PUSD's intentions as far as revision of curriculum to remove any traces of CRT. I said no to CRT respectfully and rightfully, and stated clearly and logically why. In return, I was called a hater, a wacko, one who monopolizes meetings. But none of those name-caller speakers presented anything constructive. They showed up here at the podium with absolutely nothing, short on presenting in a professional and logical manner why CRT and diversity are beneficial, but instead bully the ones who are actually articulated and able to explain the what and why. We have appearances from pseudo-leaders who walks out on you and students closing schools, confused between cultural awareness and diversity, parent-teacher who advocated for diversity and collusion, founder of Bloom 365 disguised as parent who asked you not to abandon diversity and inclusion, not to abandon, so there is one. Not to abandon because of vested interest and because Bloom 365 has, and I quote, a big, audacious, hairy goal to implement for PUSD. Hairy goal? In Arizona, we have the Vietnamese, Bosnian, Romanian, Somali, Laotian, Serbian, Russian, Angolan, Iraqi, and many more communities. Even ancient Greece was more like a network of communities with a shared religion and language. When we teach in classrooms about those communities, we share about their language, customs, etiquette, traditions. My problem is that in all cases, under the umbrella of diversity and inclusion, the sick-minded bring sexual content to classrooms, to elementary schools, like Savas now in Scottsdale classrooms, looking at Alaska title with blowjobs, profanity, masturbation. You can research that. Scottsdale Public School District. LGBTQ is a community, but I have never seen any literature or attempts to introduce this community by presenting about their customs, like with the Vietnamese culture, how they cook their food, how they comb their hair. It is always about sexual content. Hence the big audacious hairy goal then. That's my problem. Section, content, materials. White supremacy, yes. I'm against interrogating teacher. What does it mean to be white? And calling the white race demons as I watched the professional development session unfolded. Everybody, educators and all people at large, must be careful. I may look white to you, but I was not born here. My great-grandfathers did not own plantations. If you ever plan to teach the white kids in your classrooms about how bad white is, I would suggest you separate the whites. The Polish whites, the Bosnian whites, the Bulgarian whites, the Hungarian.
Thank you, Ms. Tepason. Appreciate your time. Thank you. Next public comment comes from Ms. Christina Rogers. Becky, do you, oh, you do have a, yep. Just want to make sure you had a green slip.
Hello. As far as, I wasn't going to speak on CRT, but I did watch a video of a trainer of CRT, Ashley Shackelford, basically call all white people racist and demons. So there are things going around that people think are not going around that are defining people by the color of their skin, and that's what we do not want. We don't want our kids to be defined by the color of their skin. We want the content of their character. Aside from that, I know that testing is becoming a question because now I appreciate that we have lifted the mask mandate. If I've heard that testing might come about, I know that some universities are doing it. Hopefully it wouldn't be something that would come to our schools. There is concern with the way sterilizing these nasal swabs. They say ethylene oxide is used to sterilize all medical equipment, so therefore there are small amounts on the COVID testing kits. And they say it's not enough to have cancer or adverse health effects. But if you're testing kids, such as U of A is requiring every other day or at least once a week, how do we not know, prolonging, projecting out into the future, that kids being tested every other day or every week with a swab in their nose that has trace amounts of ethylene oxide, this will not cause health effects later on. I mean, the government and the FDA has told us that baby powder was safe, Roundup was safe, acid reflux meds are safe, cigarettes were safe, asbestos was safe, DDT was safe. We now know that all those cause cancer, and there's lawsuits, and there's direct results of cancer from all of those. So I would just advise that we don't force testing on children, because I would hope that if that's something that's going to come about, then you would be liable for any health effects that maybe down the road you're going to hear on your radio as you're driving down the road about COVID testing causing cancer, because we don't know. Also with the masks, I don't know if you guys have heard, but a group of parents in Florida actually sent their children's masks to a lab that they wore one day. They said it was anywhere between 5 to 8 hours, and it came back with the most disgusting things on there. Things like pneumonia, tuberculosis, meningitis, food poisoning, diphtheria, meningitis, E. coli. So when people say it's just a mask, it's not just a mask. That's our concern, is you're having these things living on the kids' faces. And they go to the bathroom, they wipe themselves. We know that little kids don't necessarily wipe themselves well. Sometimes then they put their mask back on. This is all being living and breathing in their masks. So if masks ever come back, this is something you need to think about. These are adverse health effects to these masks as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Next public comment comes from Ms. Linda Busam.
Thank you, governing board members and superintendent, for letting me speak today. My name is Linda Busam, and I read an article in the American Independent News Network dated on June 27th. That told the story of Donna Bartos, who misrepresented herself and identified as a resident of Peoria and a mother of an incoming senior at Sunrise Mountain High School. She clearly advocated for CRT-based curriculum at the June 10th meeting. I remember, I was there and I watched her. Unbeknownst to everyone, Donna Bartos is the founder and the CEO of Bloom 365, who is also a contractor vendor with POSD for social and emotional learning and support services. A vendor should disclose their business interest to the governing school board. To do otherwise is clearly unethical, but that's exactly what happened. Bloom 365's goal is to educate and activate 10% of young people across the U.S. by the year 2030, and they boast that 42% of their students that they've worked with have already been activated for social change. Is this the goal of POSD, social change, or is it academics? It is clear that POSD should sever ties with Bloom 365. I also spoke with Superintendent Dr. Jason Reynolds today about an incident at the Desert Valley Elementary School where the American flag was flown upside down on Flag Day, which is an intentional insult to our country. He assured me that it was a mistake made by an employee and that it was unintentional and not politically motivated. And that may be. The matter is under investigations. Penalties have not been established, but more than likely additional training will be necessary. If this is truly an honest mistake, I suggest that the employee make a public apology announcement that will instill trust within the community. It doesn't go unnoticed that teachers who organize sick outs and curriculum directors and coaches who are committed to taking a loss for making enemies for the sake of indoctrinating our children are still employed at PUSD. Our superintendent says that these problem areas have been dealt with and it will never happen again. That is until a child comes home and tells his or her story to their parents of what happened again today in the classroom. What happened is you've just moved the goalposts. You've slapped a few hands and allowed these very same people to operate within our schools. And so this keeps happening over and over again. I'm going to make this really simple. I am done arguing whether CRT, the 1619 Project, Black Lives Matter, etc., is right or wrong. It is an ideology that is the right of every parent to pass on to their children.
Thank you, Ms. Boozum. Appreciate your time. Thank you. Next public comment, and actually this is our final public comment, comes from Ms. Jody Brackett.
Again and again with CRT. Is not about you call equity, race, diversity, etc. This is all about making money. It's always about money and power. You get funded by the government, it's about the money. It's all evil and deceiving what you're trying to teach in schools. A lot of kids are not getting math. They're not reading or writing. But yet you have time to throw this evil curriculum to teach them. How about getting back to teaching our kids to read and write? CRT is to create chaos and to create money, and that's it. You're making people what they're not. We are not racist. We're people and parents that want our kids to learn and thrive and teach our kids the right curriculum, not this wrong curriculum, CRT.
Thank you, Ms. Brackett. All right, we have no items removed from the consent agenda. Before we move on, once again, I do appreciate everybody's input. I want to make sure that our Good? Okay. Your input is, again, invaluable. We want to make sure that we create spaces for everybody to feel valued and that their opinions are also appreciated. So thank you for that. 10.1, Superintendent's Performance-Based Compensation for 2020 and 2021. We do have some public comment tied to this. Dr. Davison, we'll hear from you first. We'll hear the public comment, and then we'll get into board's questions and comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Governing Board President Sandoval, members of the board, community. Tonight I come before you simply as a representative of Human Resources to see if the board would approve Dr. Reynolds' performance-based pay compensation for the 2021 fiscal year as talked about in executive session as presented tonight as well.
Thank you for that. Thank you, sir. We'll move on to public comment tied to this line item. The first public comment comes from Ms. Jody Brackett.
Right over the last one. Okay. This is about Mr. Reynolds' pay raise. Many of us do not feel he should be getting a pay raise. Instead, he should be giving part of his high-paid salary to the teachers and classrooms. Red for Ed are always saying and fighting to have taxpayers give them more money, but they are asking from the wrong people. They should be asking less pay to these administrators and the superintendent, so they could be getting their raise. So absolutely no, he should not be getting a raise. As the phrase goes, what have you done for me lately? What have you done for us lately?
Thank you, Ms. Brackett. Next public comment comes from Ms. Trina Berg.
Good evening, President Sandoval, members of the board, Superintendent Reynolds. My name is Trina Berg. I'm president of the Peoria Education Association, and I'm here tonight to support the performance pay for our Dr. Reynolds, for our superintendent, Dr. Reynolds. Unfortunately, Dr. Reynolds hasn't had a single normal year since coming to PUSD. We've been in nothing but basically a pandemic the entire time, just as he was getting his feet wet in the district and figuring out how things go. COVID hit. He hasn't had a chance to fulfill all of the things that I know he wants to do. But what has happened since he's come in is we've started to bridge the gap between teachers, administration, and district. One of the biggest issues that constantly we deal with is like a lack of communication, a lack of transparency that we see in the district. And that is starting to get much better since he's come aboard. We fully support the goals that he has for this district. We know he's going to get there. We need to fulfill the things that we need to do, and we need to let COVID kind of settle a little bit. This might be the first kind of beginning of what might be kind of a normal year again. But a couple of things, since it was brought up. Number one, performance pay is not a raise, just as teachers get performance pay for creating our goals and fulfilling that goal. It's not a pay raise. It's part of our compensation package that was already approved. It's already part of our contracts. It's the same for performance pay for a superintendent. The other thing is, I don't know a CEO of any company, anywhere, any big boss that runs and manages as many people as a superintendent of any public school district. They're really just like teachers, just like administrators, just like all of our classified people. Everyone in the school system is underpaid for what we do, superintendents included. So we have no issue, and we fully support the performance payouts to our superintendent. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Berg. Last public comment tied to this line item comes from Ms. Heather Rooks.
Hello, board members, superintendent, and guests. Thank you for letting me speak on this important item. I first wanted to read the definition of performance: the action or process of carrying out or accomplishing an action, task, or function, the fulfillment of a claim, promise, or request. I also wanted to point out opposite words of performance: unfulfillment, disregard, neglect, inefficiency. This school year, there have been many problems that have, in my opinion, not been fulfilled by the superintendent in his duties. To me personally, not allowing my autistic child to attend school with a mask exemption at the beginning of the school year. I would like to know how much the district enrollment down is. He is also in charge of district employees and their actions. Some of those actions are staff asking fellow teachers, "When did you realize you were white?" Organized sick out by using school emails that cause schools to shut down, causing kids to become upset with missing another day of learning. Never publicly thanking those who had to step up and cover for those teachers who called out. Not addressing or making a formal apology for a United States flag being upside down at an elementary school. Not questioning why the curriculum department withheld a course outline from the board. And an employee threatening a coworker on social media that has not been handled as of today. I want to read a public record that I believe questions the words that have been misleading by our superintendent. A curriculum coach had sent, I shared the following link with some people yesterday. As of this morning, Facing History and ourselves received this lesson, responding to the insurrection at the U.S. Capitol. I'd be happy to send all of this out district-wide. All teachers are civic teachers in the upcoming days. Dr. Reynolds responded, "Thank you for the information. Please make sure that you work with Ms. Hobbs and Dr. Bell prior to sending any resources district-wide." How do you expect the community to support a performance-based pay for the superintendent when he seems to be fully aware of what is trying to be pushed into the schools? Apparently, the Peoria district has no money for textbooks, but can afford a performance pay for the superintendent. Where is the money going to come from? Teachers are upset that their pay is not enough, but the district can pay for a base pay for the superintendent. Our students need math, reading, and writing interventionists. Why are we not using that money? I don't believe the superintendent has any control of the district and doesn't deserve a performance pay. He may be working behind the scenes, but we will never know because he doesn't seem to have courage to stand for anything publicly. I want to ask the board members, is this really the best place to spend the district's money?
Thank you, Ms. Brooks. Board members, questions, comments on this line item? There's no doubt, as a district, we've been through a lot, this past 15 months. Really, the entire country has been through a lot in all districts. That said, I will say, as we have gone through this as an organization, we have taken a very informed approach and an inclusive approach as it relates to making sure that, all of our stakeholder voices are heard and in the conversation. We adapted very fluidly to all the different information that were fed to districts from resident experts. The benchmarks were certainly helpful to allow us to make objective decisions in how we open. And then as we entered, actually as we went through the subsequent months beyond September, one thing I do appreciate, which continues to happen, is Dr. Reynolds, your open door policy. Opening your door. We have many touch points, to allow individuals to be heard, express their voice, et cetera. One of them being the boardroom, certainly email. But I'm aware of Dr. Reynolds opening his door to the community, and that's just who he is, because he understands the importance of ensuring that everybody's voice is heard, to be able to make relevant and objective decisions across the district. That said, as we continued along in this very fluid situation, we made a decision in the winter time frame, how we were going to open up the winter semester. And with all the data, in addition to information from our teachers, staff, community, parents, students, we were, I believe, one of 3 districts that elected to open in a dual modality, which is face-to-face, and virtual, which, many of our students, I believe, benefited from, and it was well received, across the district, across all verticals and the community for that matter. That said, we certainly were viewed as leaders as it relates to how we leverage our data and how we adapt the data to make site-by-site decisions. We even, got to a point where one of our sites, and the leveraging of our resident experts, our medical, group that we had brought together to allow us to be able to make, again, informed decisions. I mean, one of our sites we actually shut down, for an amount of time to quarantine. This has impacted everybody differently. We are a large district. It's impacted every one of our sites differently, and it was the right decision to, shift how we use the data to make site-by-site decisions. So with that said, I do appreciate your leadership. I do appreciate the importance that you put on the voices of all, from those who are in line, our teachers and staff, to our students, to our parents, and our community. So thank you for that. Ms. Hill, questions, comments? Dr. Sorensen? Yes, sir. Ms. Underhill?
I would just say that I wholeheartedly agree with everything that you just said, President Sandoval, and I greatly appreciate the effort of you, Dr. Reynolds, during this past monumental year, and all of your cabinet and the staff and the district throughout our district. So thank you.
Thank you for that. If no further questions, comments, I do need a motion to approve the consideration of the performance-based compensation for the superintendent for the 2020-2021 fiscal year as presented.
I move to approve the performance-based compensation for Superintendent Dr. Jason Reynolds for the 2020-2021 fiscal year as presented.
Need a second? I'll second that. Ms. Contra, we have a motion by Ms. Underhill and a second by myself. Board members, please cast your votes. Motion passes, 4 yeas, 1 absent. Thank you, board members. Dr. Davidson, thank you, sir. Moving on to 10.2, discussion and consideration of the publication of the proposed fiscal year 2021-2022 maintenance and operations, district additional assistance, and other expenditure budgets, and authorization to hold a public hearing no later than July 15th, 2021. Ms. Myers.
Well, good evening, President Sandoval, members of the Governing Board, Dr. Reynolds, and community. Thank you for the opportunity to present the district's proposed fiscal year 2022 budget. Tonight, I will share general budget information and requirements, as well as a summary of the fiscal year 2022 budget process and proposed budget amounts that include maintenance and operations, district additional assistance, also known as capital, as well as classroom site fund, and select cash-controlled and grant funds. I would also like to acknowledge the work of our budget analyst, Mrs. Veronica Fabella, as well as our business services team with the budget development for the new fiscal year. Per Arizona Revised Statute 15905A, school districts are required to propose and adopt a budget by July 15th each year. This includes the requirement to propose and publish the expenditure budget no later than July 5th and to hold a public hearing prior to the proposed budget being adopted. This year, the Auditor General's Office has published preliminary fiscal year 2022 budget forms for school districts to propose their budget on. This is due to the legislature not having concluded this year's legislative session prior to the forms being published. The preliminary forms this evening that we're presenting do incorporate legislation enacted to date, and final fiscal year 2022 funding calculations will be included in the final budget forms and will apply to the entire fiscal year per Arizona Revised Statute 15901-5. The Arizona Department of Education has directed public school districts in Arizona to propose and adopt the fiscal year 2022 expenditure budget on the preliminary forms that we're presenting this evening, and to revise the budget prior to September 15th as required by Arizona Revised Statute 15905Q. So in essence, we will have one additional budget revision this year. The Arizona Department of Education has notified districts here in Arizona that by July 15th, the Auditor General's Office will make the final budget forms available for use with the required budget revision. Each year, various internal and external factors affect the budget process, and fixed and variable considerations include new funding from the state of Arizona that is based on student enrollment, as well as inflation funding and teacher compensation increase incentives, as well as annual cost increases that include employee minimum wage requirements, employer benefit costs, utilities, state retirement system expenditures, and curriculum and student learning initiatives. The proposed budget development is a multi-month process that involves input from the district's budget team with stakeholder input from all of our employee groups as well as administration. Fiscal year 2022 budget recommendations, including compensation recommendations, were previously presented to the governing board in April, and those recommendations were approved by the governing board on April 22nd of this year. The proposed budget tonight includes budget limits that are already calculated in accordance with the legislative session to date. So based on what has passed, we've used those numbers with this proposed budget. However, again, the final session bills and budget has not been finalized, and the session is still underway. Included in the proposed budget limits is an increase in the fiscal year 2022 base support level of 1.97%, and includes both inflation funding and the increase for the 20 by 2020 funding. You may recall that I mentioned had previously been included in classroom site fund. That's now in the base support level as well. The proposed budget also includes full district additional assistance restoration and funding from the district's 13% maintenance and operations override that was renewed and continued by our community in November of 2020. Each year when we propose the budget, we estimate the tax rate with the tax rate and tax levy template that's issued by the Property Tax Oversight Committee and the Maricopa County Education Service Agency. The final tax rate will be set in August by the Maricopa County Education Service Agency and may change from our estimate. However, you will see in the proposed budget that there is an estimated decrease in the secondary tax rate compared to the last budget revision, for fiscal year 2021, and that is in part due to assessed valuations increasing as well as the amount of outstanding bond sales that are being amortized. That amount has decreased. During the fiscal year 2022 budget process with the budget team and associated recommendations that were provided to the governing board in April, variable fiscal year 2022 expenditures that we considered included a retirement system, Arizona retirement system increase for employers of 0.19%, excuse me. That also does affect our employees, but the employer cost is a district expense, as well as a 3.99% health insurance benefit renewal increase that, as we've previously shared, will not be passed on to our employees, but will rather be absorbed by our net position with Valley Schools. Included also in the budget is the compensation increases that have been previously approved, as well as retention stipends for all staff from a non-M&O funding source. Also included in the proposed fiscal year 2022 budget is, as I mentioned, changes to our salary schedule to attract the best and the brightest staff. And with our 3% compensation increase, I will note there is this year a longevity increase for long-term employees as well. And there was not a recommendation to change our performance pay amounts for teachers or admin staff for next year. Maintenance and operations is where most of the daily activities for the district occur, and that includes teacher and staff salaries and benefits, purchase services, supplies, utility costs, special education, and transportation costs. The proposed budget for next year is in an amount of $276,046,515 and is based on 34,918.926 unweighted student average daily membership, as well as an estimate for our fiscal year 2021 carry forward. This budget amount includes the increase to the base support level that I mentioned earlier, as well as inflation funding and additional teacher compensation. The M&O override is also included in this amount, totaling an estimate of $27.8 million. Capital funding is also used to purchase textbooks, technology and software, instructional aids, vehicles, equipment, and capital repairs to buildings and infrastructure. The proposed district additional assistance budget for fiscal year 2022 is $28,820,777, and that also includes our projected carry forward from fiscal year 2021. And classroom site fund is used for classroom teacher salaries, performance pay, and other eligible expenses. You've also heard us refer to it as Prop 301 funding. The fiscal year 2022 classroom site fund budget is $38,269,796 and includes an estimate for the current year's carry forward. Eligible use of the funding was expanded as part of the legislative session this year, and that expanded eligibility will become an integral part of our fiscal year 2023 budget process. The proposed budget also contains budgeted amounts for non-levy cash-controlled funds, 5 examples of which I do have on this slide, as well as $60.8 million for federal and state grants, which includes a budget amount of $22 million for coronavirus response and relief supplemental appropriations and American Rescue Plan reimbursement grant funding. Administration has previously shared that the Peoria Unified School District did receive $4.2 million of ESSER 1 reimbursement grant funding that has been utilized over the last 2 fiscal years, fiscal year 2020 at the beginning of the pandemic, the latter part of that fiscal year, as well as fiscal year 2021. And expenditures included PP&E, personal protective equipment, sanitation, air filtration equipment, technology, software, and other COVID-19 preparation and prevention expenditures. And as it was noted earlier this evening, We were one of very few districts who were open and offering in-person instruction for the majority of the school year, and that required us to have additional expenditures in the area of PP&E, as well as sanitation and custodial costs. This grant, as I've shared previously with our budget revision for the current fiscal year, has been fully expended, and we will not be including any of the ESSER 1 reimbursement grant funding in the proposed fiscal year 2022 budget. Eligible Arizona school districts also received ESSER 2 funds through the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act that was enacted in December 27th, actually, 2020 by Congress. The resulting ESSER 2 funding is a reimbursement grant allocation to the district totaling $17.4 million. And I previously shared with our last budget revision as well that it is a multi-year grant going back to the beginning of the pandemic through September 30th, 2023. Expenditures and priorities for the ESSER 2 funding have included technology purchases, as well as to provide funding for our summer enrichment courses that we've offered, our 5th quarter you've heard us refer to. And so that grant has been used for those expenditures. For fiscal year 2022, we are including $8 million of that grant for next year. And then the American Rescue Plan, also referred to as ARP, was enacted on March 11th, 2021, and associated ESSER 3 funding amounts have been made available to school districts. And I should note that with ESSER 1, ESSER 2, and ESSER 3, the dollar amount is calculated in part based on Title I eligibility, Part A. And so the state of Arizona actually does a calculation based on Title I funding and eligibility on how much of the federal money is given to each school district. And ESSER 3 is a multi-year reimbursement grant as well, similar to the first 2 ESSER grants. And for Peoria Unified, the allocation amount is $39.4 million. It's a reimbursement grant, and the funding does go through September 30th of 2024. ESSER 3 has new requirements that are different from the first 2 ESSER grants, and within the American Rescue Plan, there is a requirement to have a 20% set aside for certain expenditures that are being provided as a requirement from the federal government through the states. The district has initiated a process to evaluate the grant requirements and eligible expenditure categories, and subsequently for next year we have included $15 million in the proposed budget under ESSER 3. However, we are working as an administrative team to assess a district-wide need assessment, and with future budget revision, that amount might be adjusted downward. And with that, we'll move on to the recommendation that will be brought forth when we have our next regularly scheduled meeting on July 8th. We're recommending, as administration, that the governing board approve the proposed budget for fiscal year 2022 and that we hold a public hearing at the next board meeting to adopt the budget for the new year. And with that, I will conclude the presentation. I'm available to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Myers, and as always, thank you for the very detailed presentation. Board members, questions, comments? Ms. Hill?
I just wanted to clarify, I think from my understanding of the documents that you showed that the monies that we received from the government and grants and so forth to go towards PPEs and basically COVID-related response, those will not be utilized in 2022. Is that right? Or we've run through the money, is that correct? Or
Thank you. President Sandoval, Mrs. Hill, members of the board, thank you for the opportunity to clarify my comments. There are 3 separate ESSER grants, the reimbursement grants, and as I highlighted, and I'll actually go back to the first slide, throughout the pandemic, the federal government provided additional funding to school districts through the state of Arizona. So it wasn't just to school districts, it was also to states and the governor's office as well as the ADE to assist in the response and recovery from COVID-19. And so the first grant was made available in the late spring of 2020. That was ESSER 1. and that was $4.2 million. That grant has been fully expended over the last 15 months to pay for PP&E, technology, sanitation, custodial needs to help the district address the pandemic and COVID-19. In the spring of this year, 2021, a second grant was made available, and that is ESSER 2. And that's the $17.4 million. And the district has begun to expend those dollars again as a reimbursement grant. So we have to comply with the grant requirements and submit for reimbursement through the Arizona Department of Education. But we've used those funds to pay for technology and our summer enrichment to address learning opportunities for our students. The third grant has not been utilized to date, and that's also in our next budget. That's fiscal year 2022. So ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 are in the proposed budget. ESSER 1 is what has been fully expended and is not in next year's budget.
Thank you. Let me ask this question because I'm just trying to figure this out and wrap my head around it too. If the federal government gave us X amount of dollars that are supposed to be used for PPEs, and let's say depending on how COVID goes and we don't actually need it, what happens to that money?
President Sandoval, Mrs. Hill, members of the governing board, PP&E is one area that can be expended within the ESSER grants. There are also opportunities for technology as well as to address building needs. So there's a laundry list of requirements that go along with each grant. So districts are working closely with ADE on the requirements. This is something that's new. And so to ask that question, would we not have a need for it, I think might be early in the process. What we can say is we utilize the full ESSER 1 grant, and we're in compliance with the eligibility for ESSER 2 and ESSER 3. We're working on as an administrative team to ensure we're meeting the requirements and that those funds are used appropriately within the district.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hill. Thank you, Ms. Myers. Dr. Sorensen.
What does that mean with the ESSER 3 talking about the 20% set aside requirement? I'm sorry if you went in that and I missed it. What does that look like? What does that mean for us?
Thank you. President Sandoval, Dr. Sorensen, members of the governing board. There are certain requirements similar to with Title I monies where there are set-asides, where there are specific criteria versus more of a discretionary approach. And we will be sharing with the governing board with those requirements what next steps will include, but there are specific needs, including summer learning loss is part of that 20% that is a non-negotiable on how you use those funds.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sorensen. Ms. Underhill?
Sorry, you may have already covered this, Dr. Sorensen, but so some of the dollars from ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 we're able to utilize to make up for some of the loss that the students have seen, the learning loss. Is that correct?
Yes, okay, absolutely. Great. In fact, that's one of the main areas in those two grants that are highlighted as being eligible. And with ESSER 3, it's a requirement with that set aside.
Excellent, thank you. And yeah, thank you very much for the presentation and for also answering my line item questions efficiently, and so appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Underhill. Ms. Myers, quick question. I know we've gone over it before because we've gone through this budget or our other budgets, but can you talk about your mindset when you were making, I'm going to use the word assumptions, and I know that's probably not a word that you like to use in finance, but with regard to our ADM, can you talk about just that mindset to ensure that we are always putting the district in a position to be not only just fiscally viable?
Thank you, President Sandoval, members of the governing board. Our funding is based on ADM, average daily membership. That's basically student enrollment, and it's weighted based on the number of special education students that you may have in a district, as well as if you're a K-8 or a unified district and you go through 12th grade, and I should say pre-K-8, 12th grade. And so when there are fluctuations in enrollment that can impact funding, we shared in April when we brought forward the budget team's recommendations, and Mr. Moss, our Director of Research, that we are projecting that some of the students that we saw decrease with our enrollment are going to be returning in the new year. And so we talked a little bit about ADM and projections. What we are required to do is to manage current year funding with our M&O, and then there's prior year enrollment numbers that affect district additional assistance as an example, but current year funding means current year enrollment. And so this proposed budget is based on fiscal year 2021's average daily membership with an additional 800 ADM being added. And that's what we shared with you in April as our estimate. It's conservative. Mr. Moss has shared part of the background on how our research department came up with that number. That information became part of our budget development process. It was not identified by the business office, but from our research department.
Gotcha. Perfect. Thank you for that. And again, thank you for the very detailed presentation as always.
Thank you.
So board members, with that said, I do need a motion to approve the publication of the proposed fiscal year 2021-2022 maintenance and operations district additional assistance and other expenditure budgets and authorization to hold a public hearing no later than July 15th, 2021. I'll move that we approve 10.2. I do need a second.
I will second.
Ms. Contra, we have a motion by myself and a second from Ms. Hill. Board members, please cast your votes. Motion passes, 4 yeas and 1 absent. Ms. Myers, thank you very much. All right, moving on to 10.3, discussion and consideration of course fees, non-class fees, kids zone, and preschool fees for the 2021-2022 school year. Ms. Myers, welcome.
Thank you, President Sandoval, members of the governing board, Dr. Reynolds, and community. Good evening again, and thank you for the opportunity to provide recommendations related to published district fees for the upcoming school year, fiscal year 2022. Attached to this agenda item are fee schedules related to course fees, extracurricular and program fees, food service fees, and athletic fees. As part of this presentation, I will share information related to fees in the district, as well as highlight recommended fees for next year. Policy JQ-EA is the district policy that allows for Peoria Unified to charge fees for extracurricular activities, community education programs, as well as course fees for specific high school classes. Extracurricular activities are school-sponsored optional activities that may require an enrolled student to pay a fee in order to participate. Generally, any optional, non-credit activity that supplements the education program is considered a school-based extracurricular activity per Arizona Revised Statute 15342. A fee is a dollar amount that's paid directly to the school district for support of the extracurricular activities. I will note, and this actually occurred a few years back, a fee is no longer required for an activity to be eligible for tax credit purposes. However, if a school does require a fee, it cannot exceed the cost to actually provide that extracurricular activity. With governing board approval, districts are permitted to charge a fee to cover their costs. The governing board must also authorize principals to waive all or part of a fee if it creates an economic hardship for that student or family. For the fiscal year 2022 fee schedule, field trips and summer activity passes for site-related summer programs, yearbook, CPR fees, lost and damaged technology locker fees. I'm highlighting just a handful. They're all remaining the same. They're unchanged from last year. Educational competitions do vary based on the cost of the actual program. There also continues to be no recommended change in the amount that will be charged for participation fees for athletics for students within the district or for marching band. The admission cost for athletic events will also continue to be unchanged as well, the gate admission costs. There will also be no new course fees recommended for the new school year. There have been a few name changes for certain classes that we've highlighted here on this slide. The course code has remained the same. There's been no change to the actual courses. So if you're comparing the 2 years side by side, you'll notice some name changes, but that's the only change. In the area of food service, there are no recommended fee increases for the new school year. In addition, I will note, and we've shared this previously as well, that the universal free meal program that was initiated by the federal government at the beginning of the pandemic continues into the new school year. This means that breakfast and lunch will be free to our students during the day. In addition, snacks and dinners will be free for our after-school programs and preschool. If a student would want to purchase additional meals, the fees, the cost, I should say, that we're sharing on this slide is the same as it has been in prior years. We've kept that dollar amount static for quite some time. Also attached to the agenda are the fees related to Kids Zone, community preschool, and community camps and competitions. Community preschool fees have been updated to consider minimum wage increases and other program costs. We'll note that our Kids Zone program has not had a change for the new year. Administration does recommend this evening that the governing board approve the proposed course fees, program fees, extracurricular activity fees, and other district fees for the 2021-2022 school year. Thank you. That concludes the presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Board members, questions, comments? Ms. Hill?
None at this time.
Thank you. Dr. Sorensen? Thank you, sir. Ms. Underhill?
No, thank you.
Ms. Myers, no questions for me. Thank you again for a great presentation. Appreciate it. With that said, I do need a motion to approve the course fees, non-class fees, Kids Zone, and preschool fees for the 2021-2022 school year.
I move that we approve the course fees, non-class fees, Kids Zone fees, community preschool fees, and related miscellaneous charges and fees for the 2021-22 school year as presented.
I'll second that. Ms. Contra, we have a motion by Ms. Underhill and a second by myself. Board members, please cast your votes. Motion passes, 4 yeas, 1 absent. Thank you, board members. Thank you, Ms. Myers. All right, moving on to discussion items. 11.1, COVID mitigation strategies for the 2021-2022 school year. We do have some public comment tied to this slide item. We'll hear from the district, public comment, and then get into board questions, comments. Mr. Gay, welcome, sir.
Thank you, President Sandoval, members of the governing board, and Dr. Reynolds, and staff and guests. The purpose of my presentation this evening is to provide a brief summary of the COVID-related mitigation practices that will be in effect for this coming school year when our students come back to school in August. Before I get into that, just a quick preface. All of our planned practices are based on really 3 primary things. The first is current COVID health related data or health statistics that we have out there. And of course, our practices that we have planned are based on the assumption, to use that word again, that the health data will remain as good or better than it is now with regard to the various metrics that make that up. The second thing is that we are, of course, bound by any federal, state, or county directives that come out, and we are building our plan based on those current directives. So if something changes for one way or the other, we'll need to consider that and react to that appropriately. And then finally, of course, the direction that you on the governing board provide us in terms of the direction that we need to take. So that said, let me just move on. Starting with face coverings and masks, as you know, they are optional for staff, students, and visitors inside and outside, and they will remain optional as we begin the school year. We've already talked a little bit about personal protective equipment, PPE. We have a good, healthy supply on hand of hand sanitizer, both the bottles and the hand sanitizer stations that are in use in our schools and departments. And of course, the other items are personal protective equipment. And so when those items are requested by staff or even students in many cases, then they are certainly available to be provided. Our COVID response team, which I know you've heard from many, many times over the preceding months, and have just been an amazing team to help manage and react to whether it's outbreaks or individual positive cases. The COVID response team remains in effect, and the protocols that they use remain in effect. And as you know, that the team kind of moved away from personally handling situations and are leaving it to the schools to handle those routine situations, but are available as a resource to school leadership if required for an unusual circumstance or something particularly difficult to figure out. So the team remains available to do that. And of course, the data collection and so forth associated with all of that remains in place as well. And then health data updates, of course, are going to continue to be provided to the governing board, but instead of doing it live at our board meetings twice a month, we'll be doing it every week in the Friday report that you get from the staff. One thing that may change, and Danielle Airy can comment on that if you'd like to ask any questions, but we are considering sunsetting or stopping the district dashboard on or about July 1st in favor of individual parent notifications as required. And so more on that in the coming several days. Next, with regard to cafeteria operations, we are trying to return to as normal as possible operations for our cafeterias. And so there remain in effect a 3-foot distancing requirement when feasible. Now, when it's not feasible, it's typically because it's a school with very large enrollment and it's just not possible to keep kids separated that far. But when they can, they will. Hand sanitizing stations are available where the lines form so students can sanitize their hands. And then the cafeteria staff was continuing to package items such as fruit and veggie bar selections to avoid or to reduce contact with those items. With regard to cleaning and disinfecting, we've already changed practice, and we've now returned to normal operations. And of course, in the summer, that means deep cleaning. So all the deep cleaning of the schools and departments is going on as we speak, and will probably continue through the month of August. The team will be disinfecting only in locations in which a positive case has been identified or when the staff requests it for some particular reason. You know, we've been using air purifiers. There's 1 or 2 of them in this room right here. They're all over the schools and the departments, and they've been working very, very effectively. So those will remain in operation. We have a great store of a supply, I should say, of filter replacements. And so we anticipate using those indefinitely to keep our air as clean as we possibly can. And then finally, the decision is that our individual schools will notify parents regarding morning drop-off procedures. In some cases, they'll have a recess at elementary school. In other cases, they might offer tutoring sessions or any number of other activities. And so those will be individual school decisions, and they'll be notifying their communities very, very soon about how those procedures will work. And with that, concludes my presentation, and I'm available to answer questions.
Thank you, Mr. Gay. Before we get into board questions or comments, we do have, looks like 4 public comments tied to this slide item. So we'll allow for that first. With that said, this first public comment tied to 11.1 comes from Janelle Rubin.
Good evening, school board members and superintendent. Thank you for the opportunity to address you this evening. I would like to introduce a solution that probably nobody here has heard about for the COVID mitigation strategy for the 2021-22 school year. Full disclosure, this is a product that is put out by my employer. My employer is Thermo Fisher Scientific. We are the world leaders in serving science. And our mission statement is to enable our customers to make their environments healthier, cleaner, and safer. So the product is called Aerosol Sense. It's an in-air pathogen sampler system. Basically, it's a device that's about the size of a microwave oven. It weighs about 26 pounds, and it extracts air samples from the air that we breathe in any environment. And with that, with the sample, it then filters the air through a substrate that is in a cartridge. And the cartridge or the machine can be run for any number of hours. And the cartridge, once you're finished with the air filtration or the air sampling, you can send it to a lab for analysis to see if any pathogens are present in the cartridge. So I'm just going to run through some of the benefits of it. It has it's in-air pathogen surveillance. It monitors high transmission areas for improved risk assessment. It is easy to use with very minimal training required. It has a robust, capable system of including aerosol collection and separation technology to deliver consistent performance across diverse environments. It will capture not only COVID-19 pathogens, it'll also capture any viral pathogen, really. It could be tuberculosis, it could be the flu. It's actually rated for 2 versions of the flu. So I guess my question to you all would be, these are great strategies which were outlined here recently. How do you know if they're working? We've seen masks and all kinds of other strategies, and we've still had spikes and variants in the amount of people who have gotten sick. So I'm just going to leave this literature with you all. I'm actually, I work as a safety specialist in the state of Arizona, and I'm just going to leave this literature so you guys can look it over. It would be something that could be placed in the schools for increased confidence in the environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rubin. And actually, Ms. Contra, do you mind? Thank you. Next public comment tied to this line item comes from Ms. Heather Rooks.
All right, hello again, board members, superintendent, and guests. We do have some questions regarding the COVID mitigation measures. I'm not sure if it's being discussed or if it has been discussed of COVID testing. We have heard a little bit through others that COVID testing, there's some kit that can be brought into the schools and the districts of testing kids with COVID-19. We just want to know and make sure that the district is not doing this. These are our schools. It's not a medical facility. That needs to be confidential between a student and the parent and the doctor. So I was just kind of questioning to see if that has been discussed at all. We do not want it. I also wanted to talk a little bit about the quarantining. I know, they were saying that it's they have to do it because of the state. My question is, if Governor Doug Ducey lifts the state of emergency order and all the powers that come with it under Maricopa County Health Department, will those mitigation measures of quarantining the kids go away in the district? That's another question that I have that I wanted to ask. And I saw on the presentation, they were going to be talking about morning drop-off procedures. I don't understand what the morning drop-off procedures to COVID last year. They had closed off the Stancy Elementary's front parking lot. We have like a front parking lot right in front of the school, and then we have a parking lot to the right. In the front parking lot, they had closed it off with the gates, and I was wondering if this is related to keeping social distancing, but it was difficult, not just for me, but for others that I have seen, because my son has a medical disability, and I have to use the handicap park to drop him off that was in the preschool area. So it was kind of hard not being able to access the handicap spots in the morning drop-off procedures. Not just for me, I've seen other parents that I always see, we all have the same big van with having handicapped kids. So I just wanted to kind of clarify and ask if that's going to be different this year, if it's going to be open again, or if this is kind of at every single school, or if it's just across the district. So those are the questions that I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rooks. Next public comment comes from Mr. Connor Rooks.
Hi, my name is Connor, and I'm going to be talking about why kids should not be quarantined at home. In my opinion, I think us kids in school should not be quarantined because the computers glitch and run out of batteries when it's not plugged in. When that happens, my teacher is stressed and didn't know how to fix it. Some kids don't even have Wi-Fi or parents available to be there for them, for their kids. Me personally does not like quarantine because I can't hang with my friends, and I really love recess when I play with them. My brother Emmett goes to class. He gets distracted with toys and our siblings. You don't know if your mic is muted. It would be always. It would be loud in the background or say something embarrassing. That's why I think us kids should not be quarantined at home with a computer.
Thank you, Mr. Rooks. Thank you, sir. Final public comment comes from Ms. Jody Brackett, tied to this line item.
I would really appreciate an answer before I leave this podium. Is the mask wearing off the dress code regulation? I know we've talked about it many a times of asking if that was going to be off and it never was answered.
We'll make sure that district gets a response to you in short order.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for your time. Board members, questions, comments on 11.1, Ms. Hill?
Yeah, I guess I wanted to see if you could clarify for me. I know that you had mentioned that the staff in the kitchen and the cafeteria, that they would be socially distanced by 3 feet. I didn't see a mention, which I was happy about social distancing for our teachers or our students. Is school really going back to more of a normal atmosphere where they will not have to be socially distanced in any way?
Thank you, Ms. Hill, and members of the board. The intention is to get back to as close as normal as we possibly can. Even during the pandemic, in classrooms where there were a lot of students, it's virtually impossible to keep them apart 6 feet back then, and that will be impossible in many cases to keep them apart 3 feet. But the intention is, once again, to get back to normal. That's the whole plan.
I'm very delighted to hear this. I think we all are wanting to get some normalcy back in our schools, so that would be wonderful. I actually just want to make the comment as well and to reiterate, as it was mentioned before, that I do hope that our schools can omit or not have the vaccine offered at the schools when school starts, and that it will not be required for our students. You know, I know that that might be a discussion for us later, but I definitely want to keep that out of our schools if possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hill. Dr. Sorensen?
Am I correct in saying that our students, I'm thinking mostly of elementary schools that like have kids coming in one after another, that we shortened the time for students to eat to increase time for cleaning? Did we do that?
Dr. Sorensen, thank you for the question. I'm not sure I'm able to answer it. I'm just stepping into this different role here. But I think Ms. Zeri may be able to help us out, or yes, Ms. Zeri.
President Sandoval, Dr. Sorensen, there are some schools that did make modifications to their schedule in order to do, as you are sharing, having to get more students in, but they could get less students in at a time. While some of those decisions will be at the site level on some of those specifics of their procedures, again, they are being encouraged to go back to as normal of a schedule as possible. And so if there was some cushion built into the schedule, hopefully these more normal procedures will allow them to reduce that shortened time.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I asked just because it says daily cleaning has returned to normal operations, and I just always have an emphasis on schools also being a place for interpersonal relationships and communication and face-to-face communication and those kinds of things. And just to clarify, the concept of morning recess is a site-based decision.
Yes, sir. We talked to several principals, and they had been mulling over all kinds of opportunities, and they want to enable parents to drop their students off early, because we know that's a scheduling thing. It's all kinds of reasons to want to be able to do that. Many principals have decided that at their school, they prefer having the students just out on the playground, having recess, unstructured recreational time. In other cases, and particularly if the student bodies that are struggling with some potential learning loss and so forth, they wanted to offer some tutoring opportunities. I don't think that any of those are mandatory, of course, but those are just things that are going to be offered to students. And so there will be some choice there, and I believe that the principals are going to be talking quite a bit with their communities about exactly what to do in each case.
But just to clarify, that is a site-based decision?
It is, yes,
okay.
Sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sorensen. Ms. Andrew?
I do not have any questions. I'm very glad to see us getting back to almost normal. So thank you.
Mr. Gay, quick question for you, and Ms. Zeri, this might be a question for you as well. Knowing that the last day of June is Wednesday of this week, so we're in July, and then really we're back in session, right? Can you talk a little bit about, you talked earlier about communication, and we've, certainly have always been very intentional about making sure that our community is informed of, next steps, where the district's headed, in this case, how we're opening up the next semester. But I want to make sure that we give our parents that timely communication so they can certainly plan, for this upcoming year and what the expectations are. But is that a plan that is being worked on? Can you talk a little bit about it? Is that something that we'll see here in the near future?
President Sandoval, members of the board, yes, we will have out both from the district level and from the site level, from the school principals to parents, updates to mitigation procedures, sharing with them what they can expect and where they can go to find additional information. We'll include, as Mr. Gay shared, a little bit about how they can expect to be notified if there is a case on their campus and what they might be required to do if there is a case that impacts them. So we do plan to communicate that widely. We typically send a communication out to our parents that includes a number of updates for the start of the new school year, things like referencing school supply lists and anything else they would need to know to prepare for the first day of school just after the 4th of July holiday. We know many families may be spending time as a family over the holiday, and we typically have a captive audience after that time.
Gotcha. Thank you for that. I don't have any further questions, comments, board members? Good. Mr. Gay, thank you, sir. Okay, moving on to Section 12, Informational Reports. Report on upcoming meetings and events. Ms. Ari?
President Sandoval, nothing to highlight this evening.
Thank you, ma'am. 12.2, Legislative, State, and Local Updates. Ms. Myers?
Yes, well, good evening again, President Sandoval, members of the Governing Board, and Dr. Reynolds. Today, the House and Senate continue to work to address different policy issues in the House and Senate education bills. Friday afternoon, the House passed House Bill 2898, K-12 Education Budget Reconciliation. This bill includes the budget formula amounts and dollar amounts that are the same as the Senate budget bill that passed earlier in the week. However, both budgets include policy differences that are still continuing to be addressed this week. In addition to the education bills, the legislature passed Senate Bill 1828, Omnibus Taxation, that includes a flat tax rate income tax structure. The legislature is recommending a phased-in approach to phase down Arizona's income tax to 2.5% over 3 years, but only if state revenue thresholds are achieved. The package also caps the total income tax at 4.5% for filers who would be taxed under Prop 208. This concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. .3 Budget Facilities Planning and Construction Reports. These reports are on our website for easy viewing at your convenience. Other business, 13.1, board member opportunity to readdress agenda items. Ms. Hill, any items that you'd like to readdress in today's agenda, this evening's agenda? All right, thank you. Dr. Sorensen?
No, sir.
All right. Ms. Underhill? Yep, thank you. Neither do I. 13.2, request for agenda items for future governing board meetings. Ms. Hill?
None at this time.
Thank you. Dr. Sorensen?
No, sir.
Thank you. Ms. Underhill?
No, thank you.
Yep. No, neither. Thank you. Last item, motion to adjourn. I do need a motion to adjourn this meeting.
I will motion to adjourn.
I'll second that. Ms. Contra, we have a motion by Ms. Hill, a second by myself. Board members, please cast your votes. Motion to adjourn at 7:43 p.m. passes, 4 yeas and 1 absent. Thank you, board members, and thank you, community. Have a great evening.